This incident took place on a summer evening. I was in the front seat with my mother driving, and my twin sister and younger brother were in the back. We were heading to our family's cottage in the western part of Virginia, 4 hours away from our residence in Delaware. At that time, Cass and I were 12, and my brother was small, peacefully asleep in his booster seat. The Western Virginia retreat was our cherished destination, and all of us, including my mother, were eagerly looking forward to it. However, the car journey was consistently unpleasant. The vehicle lacked air conditioning, and since we didn't have smartphones back then, the limited radio stations, not playing religious gospel or idle conversation, were our only source of entertainment during the 4-hour drive. Cass and I often found ourselves staring out the window, creating stories about the people we saw and speculating about their destinations. Whenever we passed by truckers, we would attempt to signal them to honk their horns, which was always gratifying when they complied. Here's where the problem started. Cass and I matured early, so by the age of 12, we already looked older and attracted attention from older men, much to my mother's dismay. When we were approximately 2 hours away from our cottage, I made eye contact with a trucker and gestured for him to honk the horn on his semi-truck. He grinned and immediately obliged, making me smile back. However, he continued to stare and drive alongside us. He had noticed Cass behind me, my mother, and me, and unfortunately, he took a liking to what he saw. I didn't comprehend some of the gestures he was making until later, and let's just say they were highly inappropriate. When my mom noticed, she instructed me to keep my eyes down and not encourage him by continuing to look. My mother tried to slow down so he would pass, but he matched our speed, staying beside us. Frustrated, my mother accelerated and maneuvered in front of his semi-truck. Nevertheless, he shifted to the slow lane and sped up to catch us again. This continued, regardless of my mother's efforts. He remained alongside us. There were so few cars on the highway that we couldn't easily escape from him. I glanced over, and his seat was elevated enough for us to see his inappropriate actions. Although Cass and I were unaware of what he was doing at the time, my mother understood. At this point, my mother gestured rudely to the man, but he continued to smile, his grin widening. Now, we were nearing a point where the road divided into 2 lanes. The trucker abruptly cut us off and ended up in front of us. We were in such a secluded area that seeing 5 more cars the entire way there would be a miracle. The right lane was against the mountain wall, and to the left, beyond the safety railing, was a steep drop down the mountain. The roads were becoming more winding as we approached, and darkness was setting in. The man was now driving slowly, repeatedly swerving into the left lane as my mother attempted to speed past him into the wrong lane. My mother grew furious and pressed the gas hard. Now, in the wrong lane, he accelerated, trying to match our speed. Halfway past his truck, as he veered into our lane, forcing us inches from the guardrail, Cass and I were screaming in terror, unable to control ourselves. Our brother woke up and began crying just because we were, and my mother had a death grip on the steering wheel, panic written all over her face. He continued to weave in and out, evidently relishing the fear he was causing. My mother slammed on the brakes, and we swerved to the right, narrowly avoiding colliding with the mountain wall. We came to a stop, angled towards the mountain. He didn't stop and kept driving forward. All I could hear was my heartbeat pounding in my ears. My mother was trembling but took a deep breath. She didn't look at us but struggled to reverse and get us back into the right lane. I briefly feared that even after avoiding being forced off the cliff, we might end up falling backward. After 3 attempts of reversing and pulling forward, we finally managed to re-enter the right lane, traveling no faster than 30 miles per hour. Prone to car sickness, I grabbed the plastic bag in my seat, consoled myself, and vomited from fear. My mother rolled down the windows, and we drove in silence until we reached the last stop before our cabins, about 45 minutes away. It was a small gas station, but it would suffice. We cleaned up, and I brushed my teeth in the dim restroom. We left in complete darkness. The police in that area were known for being unhelpful, so we didn't bother contacting them. Additionally, there was no cell reception in that remote area. We drove in silence the rest of the way. When we arrived that night, Cass and I attempted to discuss it, but my mom shut us down. She explained that she was accustomed to men behaving creepily towards her and that it had nothing to do with us, insisting there was no reason a grown man would be looking at us over her. She built a campfire for herself, got stoned, and made us go to bed as she calmed down outside. Anyway, I'm just grateful that we didn't meet with tragedy by being forced off the mountain or colliding with the side of the mountain that evening. Despite the scarcity of cars in that area, we were also fortunate that no vehicle came around one of the bends and crashed into us while we were in the wrong lane. To this day, Cass and I experience significant anxiety while driving, and merely being near semi-trucks triggers overwhelming panic attacks for both of us. After that evening, regardless of how uneventful the trip was, we never attempted to signal truckers to honk at us again.